Tell me, what do you think it is that keeps people in line? The thing that makes people follow the rules and do as they are told, like good little boys and girls. While the law of the land is made to uphold this, it is not the force that makes it work. It is fear that drives compliance. The fear of repercussions, the fear of ostracization, the fear of being punished keeps people in line. While all kindred will tell you to kneel and obey, even those that view themselves as paragons of liberty, they just use different words, but one clan truly understands the power of rules, the reasons behind them, and of course, the best ways to uphold them. They are the Banu Haqim, another clan that has gone through some recent rebranding, at least in terms of kindred society. Like the ministry, they changed their name, but unlike them, they despise their old one, which is a little ironic, since they are responsible for them being named this way in the first place. I'll get more into that when I talk about their history, but for now just know that they used to be called the Assamites, a term they loathe and despise. It is loosely based on the Hashashin, a group that made the modern term assassin, in which they are the partly creators of. And they do utterly despise this old name, however, to the point where there might be some tension in the room should you ever use it. Now that is a very useful tool, should you use it in the right circumstances. The main reason, of course, is because they didn't give it to themselves. The Banu Haqim is what they have always called themselves in the public light, something they have somewhat re-entered of recent. They are a lot more global than they used to be before as well. Almost every member of the clan was historically of the Islamic faith, or some kindredized version of it. But now almost any people can be found within the clan, so long as they follow the rules, of course. This is in fact what unites them the most, the ideals of upholding the rules. They make excellent enforcers of any shape and variety, and if rules are broken, they will hand out punishments swiftly and efficiently, while also being just according to their code. What code they follow is of course up to the individual. While many of them follow a code like a religion, it's the most common one, some follow the codes of a country, or others a kindred faction they are a part of. There is some debate within themselves on whether they should follow the letter of the law or the spirit of the law. For the most part, it is the spirit that rules over, and if there is contradiction between the word and the spirit, they will see to it that the laws are changed. See, unlike what you might expect, they are somewhat okay with changing their code to fit with the modern world, for they understand that rules exist to govern people, and so when people change, as too should the laws. This is something even mortals struggle with from time to time. But they also view themselves as noble and just paladins. In a way, they view themselves as a judge with a sword. They are judge, jury, and executioner. I've always loved that saying. As do the Banu Haqim. They think it fits them perfectly, for they often hunt what they view as darker kindred, those with the demonic powers of the Bali, or the necromancers of Hakata, to the warlocks of Tremere. That last one has changed a little of recent. They used to utterly despise the Tremere, like every other clan did in all fairness, but they made an uneasy peace since they are now both in the same faction. If any conflict was to spring from within, it would most likely be from between these two groups, but I find that very unlikely, simply because they have a lot more in common than they think. While historically they viewed themselves as bitter rivals, they have always been a lot alike, not just in the fact that they both use blood sorcery, the Banu Haqim being a lot more limited in how they use it, but they also have very much law-abiding structures, and an emphasis on following the rules. If there is any debate within the Camarilla, these two tend to be on the same side almost every time. While still giving each other backhanded compliments, of course, because it wouldn't be the Camarilla without a little bit of spite at the end of every word. Right, now to the history of the clan. I will start briefly with their antediluvian, who is simply known as Hakim. He was known as a warrior and hunter, and very loyal to the First City. He always remained neutral to what he saw as the petty squabblings between his fellow antediluvians. He was often even sought out to end disputes between them due to his honest neutrality. It wasn't actually often that he would intervene, but during major events he would do so. He even got the nickname The Judge for being this neutral. He remained loyal to the city till its inevitable collapse, where he finally went out on his own due to the fact that all of his higher-ups went missing. The other antediluvians he could have joined, but he saw them as being a lot less, shall I say, virtuous compared to himself. He settled in what is modern-day Arabia, and made a society he thought would be more just and practical, which led to him making a caste society. It was not to assign some people above the other, but to make them fit their roles more efficiently. Now, the names that he used were different to our more modern ones, but they almost directly translate to the scholar class, the warrior class, and the magi class. With all followers of Hakim dabbled into all these aspects, but once a roadblock is hit or an issue they cannot confront alone, they will often seek out the help from the more specialized and qualified. And due to a changing in their history into events I'll get out shortly, almost all of them dabbled in being assassins as well. Even the scholars were adept with the blade. It has resulted in a highly educated and efficient clan that, unlike others, often relies on other members of the clan to succeed. The castes, of course, don't always see eye to eye, but they are a lot more functional than you would imagine. Well, they're still kindred, so it's like herding wild cats, but these wild cats have bells on them, so it's much more useful to know where they're going. Now, Hakim is a surprisingly active antediluvian, but he does not often take part in, shall I say, major events. His involvement is always impressive and more common, but a lot more worldly than the other antediluvians. He doesn't have as much as a spectacle to him, or as many legends and myths. He's still around today, in fact, and can often be seen giving advice to older members of the Camarilla. But for the most part, I'm going to be focusing on his clan as a whole. In fact, his continued survival might be the reason why he joined the Camarilla in the first place, as to stop the Sabbat from ending him. So, for a start, they have gone through several phases throughout their history. When the Banu Haqim were completely founded from scratch, they were isolationists, complete and totally wanted nothing to do with the outside world. This phase lasted the longest, and was directly under Hakim's rule for the most part, until the rise of Islam, something they had their hand in, and was the first major change. Its impressive growth, and the world of enlightened thinking that they formed, was due to them. And of course, the Hakim were a lot more expansionary during this process, but still not so open to foreigners, shall I say. To this point, their rise was a not so peaceful one. When a kindred was in their way, they would be removed, plain and simple. They viewed the other kindred, and the world as a whole, as barbarians that should not have their own time wasted interacting with them. When communication was made, it was to deny their involvement with anything that happened, and that was in the few rare exceptions. During this time, many foreign kindred began to fear them, and since they would not introduce themselves formally, most didn't even have a name to put to the blade that was stabbing their friends in the back. And so they made one. It is the kindred of Europe that gave them the name Assamite, simply because they refused to give their own while still killing their number. This is why the name they despise oh so much is their own fault for refusing to give their own, and knowing how stubborn kindred are by nature, some of them still refuse to interact with the others, and some within Europe still use this name. I myself find it slipping from my lips every now and again. This hostile period, of course, had wars and other crusades of note that I find oh so completely boring, as you borderline knows what happened. They were so closely tied to the human events that you can predict them without even thinking about it. It was only till the Convention of Thorns where this hostility period halted, as they attended and were surprisingly cordial. During the phase in between their hostility and their more modern interpretation, it was when they were hunting down the pseudo-demon kindred clan, I say with air quotes, known as the Bali. But that is a whole can of worms I think best avoided for now. This is what led to them slowly joining the Camarilla, though it did take a few 100 years after the convention, and I do mean quite a few, but they went from war to neutrality very quickly, unbelievably so in kindred terms. The ally status took a lot more reasonable time in my grasp. Something tells me there was another event that led them down this path too, perhaps a change within their ranks or the orders of Hakim. After all, they did start recruiting more and more from outside of their homeland after this. But now I should talk about what powers are under their control, for it is in fact linked to the caste system I talked about earlier. See, like most kindred, they have 3 of these powers that are more instinctual to them. The thing that sets them apart is that each caste tends to specialize in one. For example, the warrior class tend to learn celerity, while the scholars learn obfuscate more, and the magi learn blood sorcery. Now there are exceptions to this of course. Their assassins are usually skilled in all of them to some degree, but in order to ease this learning process, they usually go to the other castes to learn these powers. It makes them learn it a lot more quickly, although they're a lot slower to master. To start, they have celerity, the ability of super speed, to travel at the blink of an eye and move faster than a bullet. I shouldn't have to tell you why this powerful is useful for any warrior, a very powerful tool that the Banu Haqim use as plainly as you would expect. See, as much as I adore the children of Hakim, I have to admit that they can be so plain at times. There's no brouhaha chest beating before throwing 100 blows and screaming nonsense about something you believe in that's obviously ridiculous. Just a quick slash and the target is dead. It's clearly more practical, and as some of the younger generation would say, cool, but I miss the flair of it all. One Banu Haqim under my station is just that, all business and no pleasure. His name is Amar, and he is oh so boring. He is without a doubt the best assassin you could ask for, and one of the greatest fighters of this land. He's also well adept in all of his clan's displays. If needed for a quick task of the blade's nature, he is the one I will seek. Highly educated and intelligent, he is also handsome to boot, and yet he does not have the sliver of a personality. His impressive accolades only amplify how characterless he is. Still though, he is beyond useful and probably the most fair man you could imagine. He is married to the law, you might say. I just wish he could hold a conversation. But the clan also has use of Obfuscate, a most handy power for them indeed. While it's mastered by the scholars, it is on average used by the assassins of their rank more. They tend to use it in the less obvious ways. While invisibility is the first thing that comes to most clans' minds, they use it more so to mute themselves, to make standing on those tiles on the roof make no noise at all. Their footprints will be not even an echo, and the slashes and kills of their targets don't even produce a whimper. They would view it as a failure to rely on the more simple techniques. But with all of that being said, I do know of one who uses her powers constantly to change her form. In truth, I thought she was a Malkavian when I first met her. Her whole thing is that she embodies different systems of law and takes on a different form and personality to uphold them. The idea behind this is that she must live as a people to truly understand their rules. I see the logic behind it, but in truth I suspect she's in some form delusional or just wants to play dress-up. But I must admit she was very good at gathering information and accurately portraying other cultures' rules and ideals. She was also a hell of a lot more interesting than Amar was. But alas, she has yet to be seen since the whole London incident, and most of us fear the worst. Lastly, and a little surprising to a lot of other people, is that they have blood sorcery, or thaumaturgy, used by their mage class. Given the power of the blood, a more magical context, they are in no way as versatile or even skilled in this as the warlocks are. They're instead a lot more, shall I say, mundane and simple with their use. However, making your own blood a lethal poison or acid that can kill even a werewolf with one drop is not something you scoff at. Now, with that being said, there is one member of their Magi class who is a delight to talk to. Since he is in all forms crazy and just admits it. I have no idea what he's saying half the time, it's like he's speaking a foreign dialect, but I find him fascinating. His name is Avandelix Damandulon Devon Cavestorn Cavestor, but he just goes by Kevin. He uses his magic to learn everything he can without stepping outside of his room. A particular favourite of his is a spell known as the Eyes of Babel. This allows him to learn any language simply by consuming the eye of someone who spoke it. He's also obsessed with this foreign thing he calls anime. I have no idea what it is, but it consumes a lot of his time, and he assures me it is important to his research. The Banu Haqim leave an interesting mark upon this world. They are the most neutral clan that still picks sides and has goals of their own. They are willing to leave a grudge lie, like they have done with the likes of the Tremere, yet will see some as unredeemable monsters, and will seek to always destroy the likes of the Bali. They are students of law and paladins of justice to their eyes, while ignoring the fact that it is blood that sustains them, and they are, out of all clans, very willing to diablerize, until they join the Camarilla, of course. It is a bizarre statement, but I would say that they are a traditionalist clan that are welcome to the changing world. They more so see that the world changes to match them, and so they must keep their traditions up to date with its people. Though, if you ask me, there is little difference in the way they view it, the outcome is the same. They are slow enough to be more accommodating to the places like the Camarilla, yet more modern enough to have full-on conversations with the Anarchs in ways that I just don't understand them. They seem to be a loyal member of the Camarilla, however, and of course, they seem to be having a good time with it. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe, it would really mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.